One day in second grade, my sister Lisa was late for school. She says she doesn't remember why, but she was a very shy, sensitive child and was frightened of people staring at her. She didn't like to be looked at. And she was afraid that if she went into the classroom, her teacher, Mrs. Matson, would be angry and all of her classmates would look at her. So she just stood out there in the hallway outside the classroom, afraid to go in. Frozen in place by fear, she didn't know what to do. Just then, the principal of Sherwood Heights Elementary, Pendleton, Oregon, Joe Daly, happened to walk by. He noticed Lisa and asked her what the problem might be. And this was awkward, how to explain a fear of going into her classroom to the principal. Wouldn't sound very, how do you do that? So she tried to explain the best that she could, and as she fumbled, Mr. Daly nodded and he said, "I can fix that." And he took Lisa down to the cafeteria, where he got both of them large cinnamon rolls, reserved for the faculty. And so together they sat down and they ate their cinnamon rolls. And when they were done, Mr. Daly took Lisa back to her classroom and went in with her, explaining to Mrs. Matson that Lisa had been helping him. So Mrs. Matson didn't say boo to her. Classmates looked at her, this time with envy and awe. And she said she felt heavenly. It was wonderful. So today we heard this parable of the Good Samaritan. It is such a famous parable, we could probably all tell it from memory. So I'll keep it simple today. Just 2 points I want to make. The first is, I hope you wish you were the kind of person that Joe Daly was. And you could do what Mr. Daly did. I do. I know I do. I wish I was that person. I want to be able to notice people who are hurting in the ditch, so to speak, and then go in and be able to stop and do what needs to be done, seeing that as my top priority rather than whatever was on my mind the second before I saw them. And I think that's the problem, really, is that people turn invisible or they become problems for me, or maybe you, when we are engaged in the world. And we just can't fit them into our schedules. And I'm completely guilty of this. But often it takes so little to make such a difference. So after 50 years, my sister still hasn't forgotten those 15 minutes with the principal, how he spent that time with her and rescued her. And to this day, she still tells the story. She speaks of him using his first name, Joe Daly. Do you remember your first grade principal's first name? I mean, I don't. But to Lisa, Mr. Daly's intervention was a miracle of grace and charity. And so I wonder, what was on Mr. Daly's mind and schedule that morning going down the hallway? I wonder what he put off for 15 minutes because he saw this frightened second grader. I don't know, but I just wonder. Do you think it was more important, whatever that was, it was more important in God's eyes than what he did do? And what he did wasn't hard, it wasn't complicated. He just noticed, and he stopped, and then he reached out. We could all do that. I could do that. I'm more like the priest in the story who goes the wrong way. Who is this guy? It would change our lives if we did, and it would change other people's lives, just like it did Lisa's. Deep down, we know that. It's why we know the story by heart. It's why Jesus told us the story. Second point I want to make is about our relationship with Jesus. So the parable of the Good Samaritan is not just about being charitable, although that's part of it. Jesus is getting into a deeper message about himself. So there's a connection between my being the type of person who can stop and rescue even an enemy and who Jesus is for me. There's a connection to this. So, what is faith? How do we know we have it? Why do we need it? So here's one very partial, informal definition of faith for me. Faith in Jesus Christ is knowing in my heart that he did the same thing for me as Mr. Daly did for Lisa, only infinitely more so. And that knowledge in turn can let me feel the same way about Jesus as Lisa feels about Mr. Daly. Now that might sound blasphemous, comparing Joe Daly to Jesus, something like that. But we're all just like Lisa in that hallway. This is our existential situation. We're small, we're frightened, and we're stuck. We're afraid and we can't solve the problem. But then this person comes who we can only think of as super powerful, like kids think of their principals, and he's not angry at us because how foolish we are, or how weak we are, or the mess that we're in. So he reaches out and he rescues us, and he sits down and he eats with us, and then makes the hopeless situation better than we ever hoped for, and he brings us back into the community we're alienated from. That's what he does. So we human beings, we're in the ditch, we're wounded, we're alienated from God by sin. Jesus is this, he's both. He's a good Samaritan, though, who comes and pours the wine and oil of the sacraments into our wounds made by that sin, as the fathers of the church always saw that. The wine and the oil there, just think of those as terms of the sacraments that poured into our wounds of sin. And he binds us up and he heals us. And he sacrifices himself for us who had no right to his love, that we are, again, enemies, and so to speak. I meant that only that we are, again, we're separated from him. We're the other. And he restores us to happiness. That's who the Good Samaritan is. That's who Jesus is. You know, my mother also remembered the story of Joe Daly, because Lisa that day came back and told the story. And Mom used to say that when she heard from Lisa what had happened to the schools, she would have dropped on her knees and shined Mr. Daly's shoes. She was so grateful because she knew her daughter and she knew her issues. So do we drop to our knees out of gratitude when we think of what Jesus did for us and our loved ones? And when we remember that what Jesus did for us on the cross was so much more, infinitely more than what Joe Daly did? And do we feel grateful? And when we do feel that gratitude, we will be able to imitate the Good Samaritan. And that would be a beautiful prayer for today. Lord, let me know and feel how you have rescued me so I can go and do likewise.